How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Ad Podcast. We've got a great guest for you guys tonight. Ricky Abbott, the President America of Transmission, is joining us. Transmission is a B2B marketing agency, and Ricky is an authority with over 20 years of experience helping clients align brand, demand, and ABM programs. If you guys were at all looking at B2B stuff going on at Cannes this year, these guys were the belle of the ball. They had all the cool events happening and really cool activations to really show how important creativity and some of the elements that we sometimes think can be missing from B2B marketing are. So, Ricky, thanks so much, man. Really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I wish you wouldn't have said the 20 years. And I will apologize to everyone if anyone has to watch this. I've been told by everyone in my office, why did I wear a salmon jumper to this interview?
Hey, salmon! It's in season, I think, both on plates and on outfits. So appreciate you joining, man. Well, hey, I like to kick off every interview with a little bit of an origin story. So if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? How'd you get into the industry? And then maybe some of the formative moments in your career.
Well, there's a lot there. Right, let me give you a succinct version versus the next hour on it. So I grew up in England, as you can tell from my accent. I was born in London and went to school in London as well. And then went to university just outside in a place called Hertfordshire. Then when I went traveling, I was just about to go traveling just after I finished university, and my mum at the time, my mum, full stop, said, "You have to get a job before you go." I studied IT at university, so I didn't study marketing, and I looked into basically the classifieds and got a job in sales and marketing. So that's how I got into the industry. From there, I went on to work for Reed Elsevier, Reed Business Information, owned places like New Scientist, Computer Weekly doesn't exist anymore, those kind of more B2B titles. And then from there, had a brief stint at another publisher, and then moved agency side. Went to work for DWA, who later got acquired by Dentsu and Merkle, and then Transmission. And Transmission was in 2015. We started as a content marketing and media agency, and then over time built a full service business. So built a full service business, backfilled from media and content into strategy, creative, all of that, but only ever with B2B in mind. And then in 2019, we decided, hey, we've conquered the UK. Why don't we try to do what the Beatles did and try and conquer the US?
Let's go.
Try and do global domination. So we opened in February 2019. We simultaneously opened in Asia, so in Singapore, Sydney, Delhi, Beijing. And at the same time, I flew over here and started Transmission North America in San Francisco. And we now have offices in Dallas, New York, and San Francisco. And then a bit about me, just personally, I am a devout Arsenal soccer team fan. That's my home team, and much to the abuse I get from everyone else. So yeah,
love it. So you talked a little bit about the origins of Transmission, kind of starting more as like on the content studio side of things. Do you think starting from the perspective of creative and content kind of gave you guys a different point of view of how you built out the rest of the agency and the service lines, and just kind of how you're bringing creativity and making something that can sometimes feel stodgy, which is B2B marketing, more translatable, relatable, etc.?
So just to be clear, we started actually as a media and content marketing agency.
Oh, on the media and content.
Yeah.
Okay,
so myself and the owner, we used to work at an agency, DWA. That was a media agency.
Yeah, I remember them. They were in Boston, San Francisco, some of the same markets you mentioned.
That's it, right? So, and the problem we always had when we were at DWA was we were always asked to do all the results, but we had no control over the content. And at the time, Transmission as a content marketing media agency, now it sounds like old hat. At the time, it was very like novel. People are like, oh, content marketing and media together. But the problem with the content is the moment you get into content, people start saying, what about creative? What about strategy? And the answer to the question at the time was always, sure, we can do that. And eventually, so as my point earlier, we then backfilled to be a full service agency. We hired the right people on creative, the right strategists, hired the right content marketers, and built out a full service agency. But I will say that creativity, if you're a good media planner buyer, creativity is in your blood. The problem is you don't necessarily have the vehicle to express that in the right way. By building a full service agency, but from media up, meant that we had more influence over some of that creativity. And more importantly, we could knit it to results. And that's often what I find with creative agencies. People that come from sort of advertising agencies in its heartland really struggle to go, well, how is this going to be used on the distribution channel? And so sometimes you come up with hoity-toity ideas that have no way of actually working in the channel they're being executed on, which has always been the big clash between media agencies and creative agencies. We wanted to solve that for B2B specifically.
Yeah, and is that also kind of thinking about, if you have both sides, you can. Do you still start with creative, or do you think about the channel that you're going to show up in, and then kind of reverse engineer the content to match the channel a bit? Are you more holistic in that way too? You're able to kind of plan everything at the same time, or how does it work when you're holistic in that full service model versus having to work with a creative agency? They ship you a final product and then you build the media strategy.
I don't think there's actually a one size fits all. I really don't. I think it depends on where the client is, because some clients we work with have a really well built out creative and content strategy, really well built out, and actually their biggest problem is activation. Some clients have a big problem around content and creative. Some clients have a completely different issue. And by the way, this sometimes comes from media and sometimes from creative. Some clients, and especially in our world, we work with clients like Google, Qualcomm, Microsoft, HP, big customers, NetApp, Click, Iron Mountain. These are engineering-led companies, Henkel in manufacturing. These companies are P&L-led, product-led. What that means is that sometimes they're marketing their organization structure versus marketing the customer to the customer need. And so for either from a creative side or from a media side, in those product engineering teams, they're always P&L-led, so they're selling product to customers, which means they're competing against themselves. So whether you're doing activation or creative, it's actually almost irrelevant. The problem is inherent across that business. So some clients we work with on the media side, we're solving it from the media perspective, what I always call tail wagging dog. We're solving the media problem to then go up one or to solve a creative problem. Sometimes we're solving the creative problem to solve down media. And ultimately, you've got to meet the client where they are. Sometimes their maturity or where they're at in their journey is different. So we have to meet them at that point in the journey. But to your point, yes, often what happens with a lot of our clients, we then go from media into services or some services into media. And I'm definitely seeing that trend happen more and more, which is clients don't want more agencies. They want less agencies. They want one throat, without using a morbid term, they want one throat to choke. And so what they're looking for is one. And ultimately we can be that one throat want to be choked.
I hear you. So, one of the interesting components of B2B marketing is the amount of data that these organizations have. So, you're talking about Google, Meta, these are some of the companies that have the most amount of consumer and customer and account data probably than any brand in the world. If you also think of somebody like Meta, they're B2B2C, right? They sell to the largest enterprises in the world, but I bought a $100 Facebook ad this morning as an individual. So when you're thinking about that amount of data, how can that data lead to creative insights on the B2B side?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. I think on B2B, the problem we have, or the challenge we have on B2B, is we have very diverse buying groups. Yeah, so ultimately for that company that had the lower conversion rate, what we need to try and do is to drive. And I guess the biggest issue with LLMs right now is in the old world, you would have 3 months to affect your SEO strategy, and then you'd see your SEO strategy change. Well, nowadays, you implement a change on your answer engine optimization, your AEO LLM strategy, it affects in a day. It happens.
Wow.
It goes daily. You have to have it always on. So what we've actually done from a transmission perspective is we've built an AI content engine, because we need to automate this mid-funnel as much as possible. And that AI content engine basically audits your website, your YouTube, your competitors, your performance data, and also the LLM ranking data. And then from there gives recommendations. And then we're able to use AI to create the content. To my earlier point, if that then gives us the ability to create that mid-funnel content, you now have time, space, and dollars that you can dedicate towards brand. So when you do come up on that ranking that says, hey, I'm that CIO of Wells Fargo, who are the top 5 brands I want to work with? When you come up, you can spend time and effort with your brand building to build trust, so that when that user has that ranking and sees you at the top, goes, yes, I want to work with them. So what we're trying to do at the minute is automate as much of that mid-funnel as possible. And I think a lot of marketers, B2B and B2C, are struggling with that answer engine optimization service.
That's interesting. So what are the main inputs that you are seeing that affects the rankings? Is it, I've heard everything from Reddit to social media like TikTok to your web page SEO and blogs and stuff that you're putting out, third-party news rankings. Are there maybe 2 or 3 top channels that people should be thinking about in the B2B space in order to rank? And I think I had a discussion with a B2B PR shop the other day that said B2B PR is having this like heyday moment because you need these credible third-party journalistic sites or trade sites in order to be talking about you and linking to you in order to get the LLMs to pop. So you want to talk to maybe 2 or the 3 main ones that you think are important that people should be focusing on?
Yes, so I think you're right in terms of places like Reddit, and I think PR is absolutely having its heyday in terms of linkable clicks and linkable places where your story's shown. However, what we're also seeing, one of our partners, a company called BrandRank, they talk quite heavily about this. LLMs were built by academics. LLMs were built by, and actually what most people are missing is, what most people are doing is going directly to where you put the content versus what you put in the content. And actually what's important for LLMs from a ranking perspective is citable sources and academic information that backs up your claims. So, I can go on a thing and say something irrelevant. I can be in 50 places saying that thing that's irrelevant. But is it citable? Has it got data to back it up? And that's where I think if you're a brand, creating citable sources, data-led claims is going to help you to go further up the rankings, irrespective of where you put it. But yes, there are certain places like Reddit, from a PR perspective, having citable sources off-site are going to help and boost that ranking considerably.
Wow, that's really interesting. So do you think you'll see more partnerships with brands and educational institutions to do white papers that are more based off of like traditional, academic research versus, marketing studies and B2B marketing organizations like eMarketer or, some of these other, organizations that kind of stack rank and get Trustpilot, things of that nature? Like, is academic, primary research projects going to become more important for LLM optimization?
Yeah, I mean, without banging the drum on this too much, I think most brands already have the data. What they don't do is surface it in the right place. They already have the information. They're just not surfacing it because under the old world, it was boring and everyone doesn't want that data. Well, actually, for LLMs, it's really, really important. You need to be further up those rankings for that. So yeah, I think those places are still going to have a place to play, like they always have. They always have had a place to play. It's just surfacing that information into a coherent story that links to a piece of content. The one thing I will say is that SEO, much of it has been about technical SEO, so keywords, versus I think AEO is going to be a lot more about context to be shown and to be surfaced.
Interesting. So you said something else that I thought was really interesting. You said that the relationship between the buyer and the salesperson has changed once that lead comes into the CRM or gets assigned out to the rep. Maybe more focus on inbound and qualified leads that want to deal with the salespeople that can just bring them through a process quickly. They've already decided that they are interested. They have a favorable position of your brand. We've talked a long time about the consultative seller, the seller who can go out there and diagnose what their prospects' problems are, sell with a solutions education-based mindset. That's been a prized kind of, trait of like the modern account executive. What types of tooling should sales leaders be doing with their teams to be ready for this new type of lead that's coming in with these compressed buying windows, more educated than ever and ready to buy if you don't oversell or you don't overpitch?
So I think a couple of things. I think the first thing for sellers now is you've got to be a good marketer. You have to be a good marketer because you have to deliver a brand to demand experience for your sellers. You have to explain to them why they should trust your brand, what your brand stands for, why it's relevant to their needs, and how to then engage them from a demand perspective into their outcomes that they're looking for. So that, I think, is a different muscle that most sellers are having to tread. And I think this comes back to brand quite heavily, by the way, Dylan. I think brand is going to be absolutely vital, whether you're at the sales level or whether you're at the brand level. I think from a tooling perspective, and we've seen it as well because we have a sales organization that acts on behalf of our clients. And what we're seeing at the minute is more customers need to drive more relevance. Salespeople need to drive more relevance into those conversations. So leveraging the tools so that when I'm speaking to you, Dylan, I know what pain points you have, who you're connected to, how you came in, what some of the needs might be. And so instead of fishing with a net, I'm fishing with a spear. I'm being way now that in itself, if your data points are right and you're doing the right thing, can lead to way more conversion. If your data points aren't, it's going to lead to way less conversion because you're going to make misses. You're going to assume an outcome that maybe the client's not actually interested in. So we've seen a much higher conversion rate when we use these multitude of data points and we use AI and we intersect all of these parts together. I do think that this is a changing nature of the salesperson because you're a marketer and a salesperson all wrapped in one.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So how are you collecting these data signals in a different way from the prospect as they kind of come down funnel, and then not have to spend so much of it in like traditional discovery mode, I guess, for lack of a better word? AI is obviously a great tool. It can kind of like read your stock reports and read all the news and kind of deliver an executive summary before you jump out of a call with the things that you can kind of look from scanning the multitude of the internet about a particular client. But what are some of the more unseen things that you can't find with AI, and how do you collect those data points on the prospect as they come down funnel without being too obtrusive, too heavy with surveying and questions and things like that? What are some interesting ways to do that?
Yeah, so I think for a lot of customers in B2B now, people are using psychometric data, we're using intent data, we're using company information data points. We're also using what content consumption behaviors these customers are going down, because that gives us then a signal for what kind of content we want to my earlier point, when I said salespeople are going to have to be good marketers because you need to send them content. You can't send them content if you don't know what content to send them because you don't know what their habits and their needs and their behaviors are. So I think these are all the multitude of data points that we're using. Also, what channel did they come in on? What channel did they come in from? Then there's even other data points like where do they live? This is very creepy. And we're not saying where do they live, like what address, like where are they based? There are a lot of different data points we can leverage to build a more personalized conversation without being creepy. Yeah,
that's interesting. Where are you on kind of the outbound, the AIing of like the outbound sales function, like SDR? There's been a lot of hype around AI SDR. I've tried to test out quite a few things and I haven't quite found something that feels as good as, doing it slowly, more methodically. It feels a little, it's like getting really, really good, but there's just something about it that still feels unhuman, I guess is the easiest way for me to explain it. But I wonder, as somebody who's sitting at the forefront of this with these larger organizations, are you seeing, the level of outbound kind of SDR automation or agentic SDRs is it to the point where you can replace that function?
So I think mechanism wise, yes, I think, yes, you can. And I think we should probably talk a little bit about the brand impact on some of this, because I think branding is really important for those salespeople to have a better conversion rate, as I said before. But I do think on there's the mechanism of me being able to communicate with you, Dylan, and 15,000 other people, and then there's the message. What we've seen in side-by-side tests is AI or agentic or automation tools are really good at me being able to talk to 15,000 people. The problem is the message. And we had actually a client side-by-side test really recently. We were doing loads of AI automated outreach for one of our big clients, and it wasn't working. We weren't converting anything. And then our SDR said, you know what? I'm going to strip this. I'm going to do this manually now. And she did it manually. And all of a sudden, we had something like 46% of the accounts converted into meetings. 46%.
Wow.
And it was all because she took the time and the effort to be personalized in the comms versus it's, and as human beings, we all kind of know now when we're reaching it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I have these AI calls that happen, and they'll pick up the phone and go, hi, Ricky, how you doing? And I'm like, hi. And then I'm like, hold on a second, there's no one on the other end of the call. Or it is, but I'm realizing it's AI, because you pick it up pretty quickly. And we're not idiots. We pick it up pretty quickly. And now we're more attuned to that. So I think the mechanism for outbound, fine, but the message still, I think, has to be part human, part AI.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I imagine as somebody who's obsessed with like the brand health of B2B organizations or B2B brands, it can be quite damaging to a brand. Like if you sometimes you only get one touch point with a new brand and a potential buyer. And if they feel like you just spammed them or tried to trick them with AI and there wasn't, you didn't add tons of value, sometimes you get one shot. And if you blow it, you can actually create a negative impression with that, key account or that relationship that stays with you. I don't know how long, but it could be for quite a while, right?
Yeah, I think that's for salespeople. Yes, I think the bigger thing is when we're doing marketing campaigns, spamming is a really big issue. And actually, what we've seen is if we go the other side now, brand side, what we've been seeing, what we preach, that there's two barriers. We say trust is built on the brand side and the sales side, and the mid funnel is automated. On the brand side, the problem you've got, or on the awareness part of the journey, is historically we've been used to creating campaigns. So if you go back to the 50s, I mean, I wasn't alive in the 50s, neither were you. Let's talk about it. In the 50s, because all the mediums of communicating with audiences were new, TV, radio, newspaper, you had very direct ads. Buy this Coca-Cola, buy this TV, buy this. It was very direct. By the 80s, we were sick of that. So the 80s, what happened? We started creating feature-length adverts that were almost like films. Apple 1984, the Guinness ads, everything was like film, a high quality, and Ridley Scott directing them. By the 2000s, we're sort of sick of that now as well, because we've seen it 100 times. And now what happens is that the social media starts coming around, the internet starts coming around, and all of a sudden your channels explode. And what happens then? People go, well, I can send more messages. But the quality of the messages has been diluted. So now we have this thing where it's part emotion, but part product. The problem with part emotion and part product is we as humans, we know when we're being sold to. We know it. And so we see this ad and we're like, oh, it's really emotional. Great, I'm leaning in. Now there's the sell bit. And you're like, it's still a product. It's still a sales pitch. And the problem is, as marketers, we've been so used to building campaigns, and we're so driven by the business to have product in there that we're trying to constantly battle this like rational versus emotional message. In my opinion, there's younger audiences coming in now. The newer audiences that are coming in and consuming AI And also their consumption habits they're not going to Forbes or Wall Street Journal or any of those traditional channels. Where they're now going to is Amazon, Roku, Netflix, and they're consuming content on those channels now. And so what we're seeing is, yes, you still need a campaign as a foundational way to break through for your brand side and build brand equity. But what you also need to be thinking about is, how can I communicate with my audiences in a more trustworthy place where I am the ingredient, I'm not the driver. When your brand campaign, you're the driver, you're not the ingredient. In places like Amazon and Roku, or Hulu or Apple, you're the ingredient, not the driver. And the best example I can use is F1, the F1 film, created by WhatsApp. Or, there's lots of these brand storytelling films, Barbie film, Lego film, where they're the ingredient. Well, Barbie and Lego are a little bit different because they are the film. But a lot of the other brands, they're the ingredient as part of that. And a big push we've been making recently is around storytelling and brand storytelling, because we feel like if brands can tell really great stories where they're the ingredient, you can create derivative content off the back of that tells them how you did this or why you did this, and where you can be the hero of that story. But, if I asked you right for a second, when you're on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu or whatever, do you just consume, or YouTube, do you consume business content or consumer content, or both?
On like what I would consider like SVOD, I consume entertainment content. Right. But if I'm on AVOD, like YouTube, which is more search driven, then maybe it's 50-50.
But that I think is the interesting thing, is when you're creating when you're consuming entertainment content. Like I don't know if you watched did you watch the Pepsi Harrier Jet documentary?
No, but I saw it. Yeah, I saw it a bunch of times, and I was like, I should probably watch this because it's a good case study for the industry and the promotions. But I never hit the button. Right.
So this is that story is a marketing story. It's literally a marketing story. The agency's in it. I think it's Grey, or maybe it's Good B. I can't remember. But the agency's in it. The client's in it. It's about marketing. Now, it's not necessarily about a good story about marketing. It's about bad story. But it's still about marketing. And so we're telling our customers, if you can create entertainment-worthy content like that, where you're in the story, that's 50% of the battle. Because then off the back of that, you can create your own content to show how you did that, why you did that, your own case study content. You can create that. You're creating off the back of something. Like one of our clients is a client called Corn Ferry. They had this thing 8 years ago, where in Suits, the TV show, they organically mentioned to Harvey Specter said, hey, if we really want to hire this person, we should probably go to that recruitment consultant, Corn Ferry. That is brand storytelling. And so we're pushing this drum massively, saying create a campaign, but you need breakthrough moments, and things like storytelling aligned to audience needs and the way audiences consume is breakthrough creative.
Yeah, that's great. You just mentioned F1. One of the logos that I remember seeing like super prominently in that film was Expensify. That's just kind of comes to mind. Like there were lots of logos on that guy's suit or whatever, but Expensify came to the top of my mind. And I think also because, maybe I'm a marketing guy, or maybe I've used Expensify. I don't know why that was the one that I think of Expensify before I think of, Mercedes-Benz or Ferrari, like in that, probably because it stood out. Like it almost felt like, oh, wow, a B2B brand did something really cool. It stood out to me. And that's like the main brand that I can think of from a takeaway perspective. So I love that idea that you guys are thinking of like product placement in cultural moments to generate that good association and that top of mind thinking. But from the flip side, like who is the person that got the real brand equity of that movie? It's, the F1 race team and the cars and a lot of the other things. So how can B2B brands, do that level of storytelling, or do they need to? It just needs to be different, like you said, like docu-series or celebrating their customer or talking about breakthrough innovation and science. Like, can you give me an example of like an F1's doesn't have to be at the level of F1, but what's the F1 brand storytelling equivalent in the B2B space?
Honestly, Dylan, no, I can't, because B2B brands don't do it. But I actually can. That's a lie. I can. So we tried to do. So I was talking about brand storytelling, and every time we would do it with our clients, they'd say, "Give me an example," and I'd give them a B2C example. And so we were like, you know what? We tried to do it with a few customers, and one of our clients, I won't name who, did this thing with us. And they were like, we want to do brand storytelling. We'll do it as elevated customer stories. And one of their customer stories was an actual F1 racing company. But they were like, we want the story to be 50% about the brand, 30% about us, and 20% about the driver. And I was like, the problem is you can't be 30%, because if you're 30%, I automatically switch off. It has to be about the driver, because that's who people care about. They don't even care about the car. Not really. They care about the driver. The car is almost the vehicle. Well, not almost. It is the vehicle. So anyway, in B2B, we had this constant battle. So we decided instead to put our own money where our mouth is. So we created our own. So we went out and we did some story hunting with a director, a lady called Celia Ankasovich, who created Christmas Tree film that's coming out very soon. She also did the Fruitcake Factory. And the documentary we created, we did some story hunting. We found out about IBM, who is Watson. So IBM went on Jeopardy in 2012. And that is a form of brand storytelling, because they wanted to launch this service, Watson. They wanted a big moment to launch it. So they went on to Jeopardy, and they put Watson against two Jeopardy champions. And I won't give away the story because you can watch it, but we found this story. We're like, this is a form of where brand, like IBM, has done brand storytelling. It doesn't have to be a documentary. They went on Jeopardy. That's a form of brand storytelling. It's also AI before AI. So what we did was we created a documentary about that. Now, to be clear, we did not work with IBM on it. We have no interest in the story. We're not even in the story. But for us, it's a great way to show our brands how to do brand storytelling correctly. And we premiered it in Cannes. You talked about our presence in Cannes.
Yeah. I think I saw that on the press release that you guys originally reached out with. That's really cool.
Yeah, we premiered it there, and I'll tell you, one of our clients came to me afterwards and said, "I didn't know what you were talking about until I saw this, and now that I've seen this, I want to make this for us." So my point is, there doesn't really exist massively in B2B, because B2B brands don't always take the big swings.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's almost like you had to drink your own Kool-Aid before you could have a case study or something to share with clients to show them not only how great it can be from a storytelling perspective, but also the impact. Yeah, that's really cool. I am going to check out both of those films we talked about today, because I feel like they're important. So I want to talk.
If you happen to be in New York or San Francisco, we're doing premieres in both, so come along.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, well, we'll connect after the show on that. So I wanted to talk to you about another interesting trend that I feel like is happening in B2B right now, which is this idea of the B2B influencer. Within the last maybe year or two, LinkedIn has kind of taken off as a place where people are active on social. There are over 1 billion users now, but only 1% of them actually post content.
So I think the big thing we probably want to talk about before we talk about AI and the compression of the mid-funnel is how marketing are behaving now. So the old days before AI, you had X amount of dollars, and the brand and the marketer, in some way, shape, or form, the CMO, had to spread those dollars across brand, demand, sales activation from a B2B perspective. And typically the board would say, well, what drives the most amount of pipe? Demand, focus on demand. Well, that meant they weren't doing any brand work. Now, what we're seeing at the moment, or at least we're seeing it across the board in terms of our client base, is the ability to automate that mid-funnel. The ability to automate that mid-funnel, if you can do it well, gives you dollars that you can repurpose towards that brand building work, which is going to have a profound impact on driving a higher conversion. For example, one of our clients that we work with, they've got, we've been driving 80% more leads via their branded search, because we've been doing brand work. The problem is when they get those leads, they're not converting. We've done loads of analysis, and one of the reasons why they're not converting is because no one knows who the brand is. So they don't want to speak to them. But they've got a company they bought, and the company they bought, everyone wants to talk to that company because they've got a really good brand. They don't want to talk to the company that actually bought that company in the first place. Anyway, I'm getting slightly off topic, but that LLM piece in the middle, what we're seeing at the moment is companies are struggling with how to show up. B2B buyers have a really complex journey. Ultimately, we're dealing with multiple people at multiple stages. So one buyer could be right at the start of their journey. Another buyer could be right at the decision part of their journey. Another buyer could be somewhere in the middle. On top of all of that, we're dealing not just with a single point of purchase, e.g. you go on, you click and you buy your pen or you buy your phone or you buy from Amazon. You're actually engaging with marketing materials, and then you're going to salespeople who would then have a long sales cycle, and their sales cycles are quite elongated. So that complexity in the buying group means that when we're building campaigns or driving creativity, we have to cater for people at various stages. Now, having said all of that, there is a very famous stat from the Aaron Bass Institute, which talks about the 95-5 rule. 95% of your audience are out of market at any given time, with only 5% in. The biggest problem I think B2B has, and you said it earlier, boring to boring, is that we try to monitor that 5%. It's 5%, 5%, 5%. Let's hammer that 5%. And we're hammering that 5% so hard that to a point you can sometimes turn that audience off. Where you really need to spend your time and effort is on the 95%. How do you engage that 95%? And that's where I think creativity in B2B really needs to push, understanding that you've got complex buying cycles where 95% of audiences aren't in market. How do we then spend time to cut through the noise when that 95% are also being hit by really interesting, cool, and understandable, simple messages from a B2C audience? Because, they're still buying products. We're competing. We're not just competing with B2B, we're competing with B2C as well, to be clear.
Yeah, that's interesting. So during the non-in-market phase, you're essentially just trying to stay top of mind. You're trying to create positive brand association. You're trying to create good recall. That way, when that person goes from a researcher or somebody who's not in market or in need at all, when they convert to the buy cycle, you don't even have to spend media dollars on getting them. You just already have that loyalty, brand awareness. You have those things, so they think of you instead of the competition almost by default. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, I think the word I would use to encapsulate, especially given what's going on right now, is trust. Trust is the biggest challenge that I think marketers, not just B2B or B2C, marketers in general have to build. They have to build trust with the audience, because the problem now is a younger audience is coming in. That younger audience is consuming content on LLMs, on ChatGPT, Gronk, Gemini. They're getting their answer straight away. And in B2B, it's like, hey, I'm the CIO of Wells Fargo. Give me the 5 top security brands I should work with. And then you're getting the answer and you're going, do I trust this brand? Do I like this brand? That's where brand equity comes in. It's like, are you building enough trust so that when you see those 5 companies, you go, oh yeah, I like those companies, or I know those companies. And then on the sales side, sellers on B2B have a really tough time because their sales cycle used to be 6 to 9 months. They have a lot of time to work with their customers. Now their customers are coming and saying, I was on ChatGPT, I already know the answer. Just shut up and sell me what I want. And so now they've got to build trust at the sales side as well. So those 2 bookends of trust are sandwiched between a really accelerated, educated buyer in the middle.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, you hit on 2 things I want to explore. The first is the idea of LLMs and optimizing for AI search versus SEO. We hear that all categories are seeing huge drops in search traffic, and it's because of exactly what you said. People are doing their own research inside of AI and inside of LLMs, and then they're just not doing the traditional research where you Google something and you click on a bunch of websites and you read white papers and you read blog posts. You're kind of letting the robots decipher the ecosystem and kind of give you your short list. And then, like you said, you look at them and you say, okay, what do I think and feel about these companies? And then I'll go to the one that I think and feel the best if the LLM is kind of stack ranking it for me. What are you guys thinking of as far as optimizing for the LLM outcome? Like, what's the biggest challenge right now for B2B companies to optimize to be on that short list of that stack rank, or stack rank in the order that would be most valuable to them? What are the biggest things that are going into that kind of thinking and the tactics to improve that?
Yeah, so that mid part of the journey. So if we go back a step, and I will answer your question, I promise, Dylan. So
no, it's all good.
If we go back to that part of the journey, that mid funnel part of the journey is okay. Actually, let's go back to a more esoteric conversation. Most marketers have X amount of dollars to play with. In the old world before AI, they were constantly like going, I want to do brand, but I don't have the money to do brand. So I'm going to do a lot of demand work because that's where I need to drive results and pipeline for the business. Or if they did brand, the board was always like, why are you doing brand? We need to drive results now. Well, now with this compressed mid-funnel journey, it's actually a really good opportunity for most clients, because what they can do is if they can automate the content creation and the ranking within those LLMs, they can then shift dollars to brand and to sales, which is going to hyper accelerate their ability to drive conversions. Now, at the minute, yes, we're seeing exactly the same. Most brands, they're seeing lower traffic, but what they are seeing is when that traffic hits their website, it's got a higher conversion, much higher conversion.